Welcome everyone to the weekly meeting of the Democracy 3.0. We wish to create an open source democratic organization that allows for consensus building and coordinated action among large numbers of average people to take back control of the direction of the country. So, does anybody have any suggestions for the agenda today?
Um, no, I'm burnt.
You have a
Um,
report? Okay.
I'm
Let's go.
burned out.
Let's go ahead and go over the living documents.
Yeah, let's do the documents.
So they don't die. They die if you don't pay attention to them. So this is Democracy 3.0. The background is the US government is no longer optimally responsive to the needs and desires of the people. Created this organization. We meet every week. And the living documents are sort of the current experimental structure of this. The vision is what I just talked about. We're reaching out to more organizations. 1912 results, the Progressive Party platform. Are there any suggestions for edits or changes to this document?
Well, tell me about that 1912 Teddy Roosevelt. I posted that in this Discord. Is that
Yeah,
what you're talking about? Yeah.
yeah, that's from you. That's from you.
Yeah.
You got to tell us more about that.
Oh, it's
I got to
it's
read up on it.
it's all it is he's saying that the great parties were made to make government better for the people, but they've turned away from their goals and they've become tools of the powerful. And that behind the government sits an invisible government that controls the government that we see. And to destroy that government, that he called it the alliance between corrupt corporations and corrupt politicians needs to be destroyed. And that's what we got now. It's the same thing. And that's why I like to bring it up, because it's nothing's fundamentally changed, except we've come back to where we were. Maybe you changed that over that 80-year cycle, because it got better. And then the charts that you show us, Eddie, shows that from like the 70s, it started going back down. So it went up and then back down.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I do think economics are a big part of that. I mean, prior to the capital consumption cycle, you have um, what Peter Turchin calls the secular cycle. If you look at sort of medieval European history, the Roman history, and Chinese history also. There does seem to be like a sort of a standard period for the rise and fall of a dynasty, or I don't know, a monarchy of 300 years. And I suspect that my I suspect that that has a lot to do with the the characteristic timing of population growth. Prior to the Industrial Revolution in 1700, carrying capacity would have been fairly limited, and the human population would have regularly bumped up against the limits of how many people you could actually feed. And then when that happens, then you have a great deal of conflict, misery, you have plagues, and you have wars. And that does seem to happen sort of every 300 years. Um, so yeah, I do want to learn more about the history of these changes, because I think there is a very long history of these changes within democracy, um, loosely speaking. And if we can understand very well what the key factors are for how things went, like you were saying, TC, we've come out of the cycle before, and we're probably going to come out of it again. And it's just it's just a question of how.
So as far as background, why'd you pick 2020? As far as around 2020, the government was no longer responsive.
I'm just rounding to the nearest 10 years. I don't mean anything about that specific year. Say the early 2000s. Recent times, basically. There was a study, what was it, in 2014, I think, that showed that the policy preferences of voters are really not correlated to how probable it is that policy passes at all. So that was 2014.
Right.
Are you talking about the one they did? It's a graph and it shows that no matter what the people voted, they stayed at 20-30% or something, and the elite got what they wanted no matter what.
Yeah,
And,
but
uh,
yeah, they do polling, so they know how popular certain policies are, and so they can graph that, most popular policies, least popular policies, and what is the probability that they pass, and it's
Oh, okay.
unrelated to how popular they are. Like the least popular policies are just as likely to pass as the most popular policies, according to that study.
Well, I mean, as we've been talking about in the last week or so, right, is that universal background checks are supported by about 90% of the population, but the odds of them passing seem slim.
And I mean, the thing is that people don't vote on policy for the most part. They vote on candidates, and even more, they may not even vote on candidates. They may just vote on their party identity.
If only there was some sort of union of swing voters with a specific set of policies that people could support.
Yeah,
Oh, no.
doggone it. Why don't somebody come up with
Somebody
that?
should come up with that, yeah.
It is amazing that you've come up with this at this time. I mean, it's almost like it was meant to be. It's like you were groomed for this, Brian, to be in the legislature, and then coming into actually writing your own legislation, or a legislation for the people, not yours. It's for us. It's for all of us. And
But it's designed to apply, it's designed to be a solution for the dilemma that we are in, right? So if we were in a different scenario, then we would have had to design something else. But yeah, it seems like a good fit to me for a lot of things that are going on in the country.
Eddie, I stayed up all night last night.
I see. I got a Discord thing from you at 4:41 in the morning your time. So I was curious if you were up super early or super late.
I never went to sleep. I was so excited from that meeting last night, and I couldn't stop. I started doing the video, and I spun up this idea in my head where people were going to start joining the union to win points or something, just win stars. And when I got to the end of the video, I realized I was the only one thinking that. So I felt kind of like a little bit disappointed in that, the fact that I'd spun all this up in my head and it wasn't real.
There's no reason it can't be real, TC.
Well,
That's sort of the point of the gamification aspect, right? Is to exactly what you guys came up with of giving people ways to compete in a positive and steer things in a positive direction.
right. Well, I got that list. Eddie, am I steering this meeting in the wrong direction?
No, you're fine, TC.
Okay.
You can steer it any way you want.
All right. I wrote those things down that you told me, and Brian, and I didn't get all of them finished, and I was hoping somebody would come and we could look at that and flush that out. But then I made the 100-day challenge, and I started on August 1st. We send an email to our candidates, and I got 3 days into it and ran out of things to do. No, I didn't run out of things to do. I didn't know where to go next. This, Eddie,
Are you looking at? I don't know if you can see
your menus or
the
something.
menu. Yeah. 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 Brian, I don't know if you we could do a American Union living roadmap if you want.
I don't really know what you have in mind for that.
There
It's
it
just
is.
it's just a document to track where a group of people is, where you are, what the vision is, and what the next steps are. You know, I look. You had a there's a you know. I think that with a group of people, it's I don't know. I think it's important to sort of keep focused on those things. Otherwise, I think it's easy to lose direction and lose momentum. Either that, or we could do one on gamification.
I don't know. So is lockdown over for you, Eddie?
As of today, we got a PCR test yesterday, so that we can go out today. So today we're going out to get some Texas style barbecue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bet you the kids will can't wait to get out of the house, huh?
Yeah, well, they've been able to go downstairs, which I think is, is okay for them. But yeah, it'll be fun to leave the apartment complex. Go out and go to a restaurant. Haven't been to a restaurant in a month or two.
Well, I got this things to do to build the American Union. Brian, you're looking at that too, right?
Yes.
And there's some of these things I jotted down just it's like the outline, and it needs to be, like a Reddit blog post. How many replies you want to get for that, or
I don't know.
all right, we won't do it then.
You were gonna come up with some Facebook challenges?
When?
What's that?
Oh, who was coming up with Facebook
I
challenge?
said I didn't know anything about Facebook. You said you'd handle that. You could come up with challenges for Facebook.
Never mind.
So have you gotten any sleep since last time I saw you, TC?
Yeah, I slept 2 hours a little while ago. I was telling Eddie I have manic depression, so if I let my manic run wild, then sure as shit, my depression is going to come right behind it. So it's just, but I love to do manic stuff, so I kind of have to pay the price for it. But it's not so bad because I can get out of it a lot quicker now than I used to. I have a more light attitude about it all, just to let it go and not worry about it and let it be. Did you get any more signs out, Brian?
It was not a super productive day.
Oh. I couldn't get into that. Normally I go to the people in New York, the United People's Assembly. I
Yeah.
couldn't get in there today for some reason, so. And so I took a nap instead. What else you got behind that document there, Eddie? You got another document?
Yeah, I've got our other documents on election security.
Oh yeah. Nissan was into that a lot. Yeah.
And the other one is organizational collaboration.
Supposed to be the Wednesday night meeting, right?
Oh no, it's
Oh, it's that.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But
The
I
list of all
played with
the.
it a little bit with like your new Discord seems, it feels to me a little bit like this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Brian, last night you were talking about the umbrella and the groups and the subgroups and the children and the grandchildren. And it reminded me, if you start setting all that up, we'll end up looking like those groups in New York where they spend a lot of time trying to figure out what groups is who.
Right. I want to pick your brains on the history of democracy a bit.
Shoot.
So you have I feel like you have two layers that interact with each other. And one is organizational layer, like the sort of the political parties, and then one is the layer of ideas. Ideas like what people want, what people don't want. Back in the 1600s, it was religion. And back in the 1600s, you know, you had the Catholic Church as an organization. You had the monarchy. You had the aristocracy. I don't think you had political parties back then. So it was more, they sort of, you know, people sort of glommed onto religion as a thing to disagree over.
So you're saying that
It seems to me
there's
that
always going to be like two groups, two power groups,
yeah,
whether
it
they're
seems
based
that-
on religion or political party?
yeah. Well, definitely, I feel like you know, a struggle tends to divide people into two groups. You know, because you sort of people end up having to take a side. If they don't take a side that they want, then you know, by their lack of support, you know, then you know they may end up helping the other side, the side that they're not thinking about joining, helping that side win. So yeah, you definitely it does seem that you end up with two sides a lot, and then there's organizations like there's parties. So you had you had the Whig Party, you had the Democrats, and then the Whig parties died, and the Republican Party came up, and you know you've had a little bit of evolution, a little bit of that action all throughout history. And then I feel like the ideas are another layer. They're actually separate from the parties, and the ideas behind the parties evolve over time. They're not strictly linked. One party or one organization is not strictly linked to one idea or one set of ideas. I mean, it's a little bit right. So
Because essentially they're alliances. They're not oriented around principles.
right,
And so if one alliance starts to get weak, it looks for another way to bring some more people in.
yeah, right. What about the history of the ideas? Like, what do you have any idea? Do you have any idea what an understanding of that process would look like?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by history of the idea exactly.
History of the idea.
Like the I don't want to say philosophers, but the people like from the Enlightenment and stuff that influenced Jefferson and so forth with their ideas.
Right. So I mean, you had the idea of monarchy at one point in history, and you had the idea of sort of like democratic ideals. But when it was first born, it was really democratic ideals among sort of landowner, certain class and maybe race of people, depending where you are. But it was different. It was different from the idea of monarchy. I mean, the idea of monarchy and the idea of democracy, those two things sort of struggled with each other. And I think there were monarchist movements in the, I think the conservatives were sort of like monarchists, in the 19th century, and even into the early 20th century. I think like in Italy, I think there were still monarchists at the time of the rise of fascism in Italy. Ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to go back and read some of the, some Rousseau and Kant and Locke and some of, I don't know. I tried to read some of the older stuff. And it's kind of, it's interesting because they have, I don't know, the stuff that you hear, you can see the roots of a lot of modern ideas in there. But then you also see ways that they had their philosophies and things were for a goal of a functional society. And so then to see, modern groups take like small parts of it out of context and be like, oh, they're for a free market. And, we should do everything, let the free market handle everything. And no, that really wasn't the point. The point was, I don't know. I don't know, but it's interesting to go back and read some of their stuff because they have a lot of, when you put it to give context to
Yeah.
things.
And I think that the Catholic Church was sort of a big power player, in a certain time. I'm not really just getting into history, so I just know the broad outlines. But my impression is that before the rise of monarchies, it was, sort of even further back, like during medieval times, like the Catholic Church was sort of quite important.
Yeah, I'm not sure. My focus is generally on American history and the more direct roots of it.
Okay.
Monarchy in the ancient Catholic Church is a little
Okay.
too far back for me.
Right.
I can tell you that at the very beginning of the discovery of the quote New World, in 1493, they did the doctrine of discovery, and it was the papal. So I think that meant like the church. So the Pope and the King got together and they made this document up. So there was a time when the church and the state were kind of in cahoots, I think.
Yeah.
I know the church is very powerful and has a lot of. It makes money. I mean, they have a lot of money.
Yeah, they owned a great deal of land, so they had a lot of money, and they had a great deal of influence because everyone was religious. So they could, I mean, they could, right? They could say that, this king was. They could excommunicate someone, and that was a big deal.
Right.
Telling the whole world that this person is, not on the right side and whatever. So I guess American, yeah,
You know, they used that doctrine of discovery in the Supreme Court as recently as probably 40 years ago.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's it has to do with our heritage. Our heritage, Eddie. Somebody asked me, how come you stay so on top of the American politics? And I said, well, he grew up here, It's like, yeah, it's very interesting. It's fun, kind of like to watch.
Right.
It's the best game in town. God.
So Brian, like 19th century European politics, you don't study that too much, just American.
Primarily.
So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about American Revolution, the Civil War, and the Great Depression era? All three of these eras, they do have these like shuffling organizations. So like with American Revolution, you had a British power structure, and then you had a rebellion against that. So you had the rise of a new side that was, going for independence and throwing off the British power structures. And then with the Civil War, you had the shuffle with the Whig Party dying and the Republican Party, being born at that time, and being born, more or less on the controversy of slavery and going straight into a war very soon after that. And then Great Depression era, you had the sort of the end of the Republican era, the Democratic Party came up, and you had the New Deal, FDR. And you had a little bit of a shift in power from the Republicans to the Democrats at that time.
Yeah, I mean, you had a pretty big shift, right? Because the Democrats controlled the Oval Office for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty powerful shift.
Well, didn't Lyndon Johnson say that when he signed the Civil Rights Bill that would be the end of the something? And so the South used to be all Democratic, and then they became, and then Nixon, no, somebody went down there and did a Southern strategy and turned them all into Republicans.
Well, so part of it was, Barry Goldwater sort of laid some of the groundwork for that in 1964.
Yeah.
Right, because Nixon was the last Republican candidate who got, he got 30% of the black vote, and then since then, in 1960, not in the 70s, but in 1960, he got 30% of the black vote when he ran for president. And then since that time, Trump, I think, has the high water mark of, he's gotten it up to like 15%. It's the first time it broke double digits since then, I think. But because it was Barry Goldwater in 1964.
I remember. My father was into Goldwater. Yeah.
So Strom Thurmond, right? Didn't he switched parties or something to support Barry Goldwater for president? So the racist Republicans all of a sudden had someone they could look to. And even Martin Luther King, who tried to stay out of politics and stuff like that, he said, we can't let Barry Goldwater win. It'd be terrible for our community. So Goldwater, I think, got 6% of the black vote in 1964, and that was pretty much the end of it.
So what was Barry Goldwater about? You're gonna have to bring me up from scratch.
Well, so part of the problem is that normally the getting the nomination for president is a competitive contest, but since John F. Kennedy got assassinated in November of 1963 and Lyndon Johnson took over, like, he was going to get reelected in a landslide. It was already set. So the Republicans are like, why would I want to waste my political capital trying to get the Republican nomination in 1964 when I know I'm going to lose? And so Barry Goldwater just kind of got it, and he was this very conservative kind of libertarian Republican who opposed this things like the Civil Rights Act and stuff like that. And if I remember, his parents like owned a department store chain or something like that. So he was very well off and was convinced that capitalism was the solution to everybody's problems. All they had to do was be born rich, and it would work great for everyone. So he got the nomination and shifted the Republican Party to the right in 1964. I don't have them in front of me, but there's some interesting statistics and surveys and stuff from around that time of like, which party do you think is better on this or that? And where it had been pretty neutral before 1964, there really started to be a shift in the way that people thought about parties.
it flipped.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
people where I grew up, they still have that mixed up in their mind, and the terrible Democrats, and they don't realize that was the South before they became Republicans, and they don't get it that they're carrying out the same legacy, just in a different party.
Wait, so they associate Democrats with, so they think of the terrible Democrats because they grew up Republican back when, prior to Goldwater, and back then, what did the Republican Party represent back then before Goldwater?
Have you ever seen that thing of the 1956 Republican platform? It sounds like a Democratic platform now. Back in 1956, they were into, I think they had for unions and other things like that.
Yeah, I've never read a biography of Dwight D. Eisenhower, but I read some of his speeches and stuff that seemed pretty good. But yeah, I mean, back in as the Democrats ran everything after the 1932 FDR's election, for a while the Republicans were just like trying to be the opposite of the Democrats. But all right, let's see what Eddie's got for us here.
Yeah, you're looking it up. I'm on that page too. There was one that was like a little card, like the cards you make, Brian, to the palm cards.
But cannot so well do for themselves in their separate individual capacities, but in all that people can individually do as well for themselves, government ought not to interfere.
Here's it in bullet points. Provide federal assistance to low-income communities. Protect Social Security. Provide asylum for refugees. Extend minimum wage. Improve unemployment benefit system so it covers more people.
Do you want to share screen, TC? Do
Um,
you want to share your screen?
it's disabled.
I just enabled it. It should work if you try it again.
Now let me see where I'm at. Here it is. Are you seeing this?
Yes.
Number one, provide federal. Well, let's see where we're at. Viral Moon says 1956 Republican platform was pretty liberal. And there it is. I read that already. Assure equal pay for equal work regardless of sex. Now that was 1956. So what happened? The Southern Strategy.
The Backstreet Boys thing on your screen, TC?
Yes.
Oh.
Add.
Where are you getting?
Okay, Eddie, did we get that?
Yeah, that looks pretty liberal to me. What were the Democrats saying back then? That sounds like a Democratic Party platform, doesn't it?
Well, I think that was no, I'm thinking about 48 when that guy Wallace and right at the end Roosevelt made a second Bill of Rights. But that was in the late 40s then when that happened. Or that was in the 40s anyway, so. Oh, I can stop sharing. There we go.
So I was just reading today about Margaret Chase Smith, who was a senator from Maine, Republican senator in 1950, when Joe McCarthy was like doing all this fear mongering and stuff. And so she made this big speech on the Senate to say, this isn't what the Republican Party should stand for. And a lot of it really looks very similar to what she says. I would not want to see the Republican Party ride to political victory on the 4 horsemen of calamity: fear, ignorance, bigotry, and smear. I doubt if the Republican Party could do so, because I don't believe the American people would uphold any political party that puts political exploitation above national interests. Surely we Republicans are not that desperate for victory.
Wait, who is this talking and when?
Yeah, can I share my screen here?
Yeah.
It sounds like today, though.
Yeah. So this is
1950, that's before I was
Declaration of Conscience. And so this is a speech that she gave in the Senate of, you don't want to see the Republicans ride to political victory on fear, ignorance, bigotry, and smear. And so their statement, the statement of 7 Republican senators were Republicans, but Americans first. And, Democrats aren't good enough. But I don't know, just so much of this like really fits today.
Yeah.
Yeah. As members of the minority party, we don't have the primary authority to formulate the policy of our government, but we have a responsibility of rendering constructive criticism, of clarifying issues and allaying fears by acting as responsible citizens. Yes, that's what the minority party should be doing, offering constructive criticism and clarifying things, not just being crazy. So
Yeah, the beat goes on. Well, my hope is that somehow this transition, everything's going to move away from that cycle that we've been in, seems like, since Enlightenment, probably.
Yeah, I think we could do it. I think we're at the level of development economically where it could be done.
Oh, did we ever figure out what is the forces that are stopping UBI? Like I was saying that the pharmaceuticals, they control the medicine, and in the insurance industry, they control Medicare, the fight against Medicare. So who's running the fight against UBI? And then I remember you guys told me it was because it's a brand new idea. It just came out with Yang.
Yeah.
I mean, well, it's not a brand new idea. It's a brand new idea to this generation.
I mean, part of it is that it's sort of a nebulous idea.
Yeah.
And until there's actual specifics, right? Like with negotiating prescription drug prices is very specific, which is let's pay the pharmaceutical companies less money for the same amount of prescription drugs. And so there's a very clear, loser in that situation that, fights for it. But UBI is a little more nebulous. So unless there's something specific as far as funding and whatever like that, I think it's harder to get people to line up against it. I don't know.
Well, on the other hand, the movement is growing. I mean, more and more people are talking about it, and more people are getting open to the idea of it happening. I mean, there is a shift in that direction, and the economic pressures are moving in that direction also, is, automation and whatnot, and so forth.
I really feel like economists are a little bit to blame because they don't have their act together. And they don't get what's going on. And yeah, I mean, I really think, and there's, you have the professional economists, and then you have everyone else who, needs to know a little bit, if they're going to be in politics or if they're going to appear knowledgeable about things.
Who
Yeah.
do you follow, Eddie?
I don't follow anyone. I figure stuff out for myself.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I look at what, I look at what everybody says. I look at, you have Paul Krugman is sort of a like middle of the road economist. You have Paul Krugman is probably the most famous one. You've got the guy who wrote the textbook, but he's not on Twitter or anything. And then you've got, on the MMT side, you've got like Stephanie Kelton. And then you have,
Are you aware of Richard Wolff? He's a Marxist economist.
sounds a little bit familiar. Yeah.
He
I
has a
I think that Joan Robinson actually wrote some fairly interesting stuff, which is a little bit similar to my ideas.
Was she a Keynesian economist?
I think she was sort of like that. I think she was like a Marxian, actually. Post-Keynesian is what she is.
The name sounds familiar, but I couldn't place it. So
Yeah, she's just not super well known, but she's not famous. She's not like super famous, but she's she's well known in some circles. Let's see. Let me share screen. So she's listed as a post-Keynesian, but in 1942, she wrote,
I got the same page on my screen too.
right, economics about Karl Marx. And there are some ideas, like I feel like some of Marx's ideas should have actually been revised and improved, but instead they were sort of all like thrown out together. And I think some of the stuff that he wrote was not that good. Like I think his theory of value doesn't really work. But yeah, she thought about capital and stuff. And I think this, from what little I've read, like she was sort of seems to be more or less right. But like I think that things had not like really come to a head. So she passed away in 1983, and I think things have just become much more clear in the last 40 years. And in 1980, it probably was not really clear where the future was headed. But yeah.
That was Morning in America, 1980. Ronald Reagan, Morning in America.
You see, I'm always looking for someone to sort of bounce ideas off. I have this whole set of ideas that I so far I've not yet like gotten a question from anybody that has really stumped me. Or every now and then a question is thought provoking, and then like the ideas sort of move forward a little bit. But they're all in my head. I've not really been able to get them on paper in a super well organized way. So I'm always looking for people to try and
Speak clear. Speak clear. I mean, more information, maybe. is what
Yeah.
it-
Yeah, I
what it-
need to like organize it. There's a lot of, I mean, I think if I got it all down in an organized fashion, it would be like a whole book.
Oh
But
yeah.
I guess in the meantime, I'm trying to write a white paper about essentially about why we need and how we could use a UBI, a crypto UBI, or a digital UBI. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You
I-
know, Brian, you point out how easy they can change the law when they want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I look at leaders and I really don't, I really think most of them are confused and they're not sure if UBI would work or not. They're not really sure what UBI would do. So yeah, and I think a lot of political leaders are generally a little conservative. So to me, it's not surprising, like looking at what people write, it's not surprising to me that they're not enacting UBI because they don't, to me, I can sort of get the feeling that they don't really understand what it would do. So yeah.
I saw an editorial today by Ro Khanna and talking about ways for the government to do more for prices. And so the suggestion was to buy commodities and things on the dip in prices and then
Yeah.
distribute them to the American people
Yes.
cheaply.
I get, yep. I get, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like it didn't make a whole lot of sense. That somehow things are just going swimming, back and forth in such a way that they're cheap, they hit cheaply, and then the government's gonna know right when to swoop in and buy them at exactly that point, and then they're gonna distribute them to everyone and sell them at that cheap price.
Yeah.
Like it seems super problematic.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, I would tell you, you've heard me tell you that the way to fix it is UBI, and I guarantee you, you're not gonna in the next 3-6 months, a year, there's not going to be a single public figure that will come out and say that and be able, would even think that. I mean, it's a little bit of a radical idea. But on the other hand, I mean, to tell you the truth, they're sort of stabbing in every which way because they don't know what the cause is, and so if you don't know what's causing something, then you're definitely not going to know how to fix it. You've got to any proposal to fix something has to have some idea about how the thing works, what the cause is, to be able to fix it. And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
First step is to know the problem.
yeah. So, I don't know. If any of y'all have Biden's phone number, have him give me a call. Fix everything. This is why it would work. Short of that, I gotta write it out and get people write it out in a fashion that people can, is complete and understandable, and then get people to start spreading the message. Well, we're trying, so I'm gonna say call the meeting officially closed. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you everyone for watching. See you guys next week.